What if I told you that every night when you lay your head on your pillow, you're actually stepping into the most powerful manifestation chamber known to humanity? That while your body rests, your subconscious mind becomes a divine workshop where miracles are not just possible, but inevitable. Tonight, something extraordinary is about to happen. As you prepare for sleep, you're not simply ending another day. You're entering what Florence Scoville Shinn called a sacred space, prepared by infinite spirit, where the very gates of wealth swing open, and divine provision flows without obstruction. Has this ever happened to you? You've gone to bed worried about money, stressed about bills, anxious about your financial future, only to wake up with an inexplicable sense of peace, or perhaps even discover an unexpected opportunity waiting in your inbox. This isn't coincidence. This is spiritual law in action. While the world sleeps, while your conscious mind finally quiets its endless chatter of doubt and limitation, your subconscious becomes what I like to call the divine receiver, completely open, utterly receptive, and perfectly aligned with the frequency of abundance that governs the entire universe. Most people approach sleep as merely a biological necessity, a time for physical restoration. But what you're about to discover might surprise you. Sleep is actually your most sacred appointment with wealth itself. Not the kind of wealth that comes through grinding and striving, but the effortless abundance that flows when you align with spiritual law. Think about this for a moment. You didn't stumble upon this message by accident. Your presence here right now, at this exact moment in your life, is part of what spiritual teachers call a divine pattern. There's something profound happening behind the scenes of your journey that goes far beyond mere coincidence or random chance. The fact that you're here listening to these words about abundance and transformation reveals that you're being guided toward a perfect realignment with universal law. Here's a hidden truth that most people never discover. Every delay you've experienced, every financial setback that left you questioning your worth, every moment when prosperity seemed just out of reach, none of it was punishment. It was preparation. The universe has been orchestrating your readiness for this very moment of awakening. Spirit has never withheld good from you. Not once, not ever. All the supply you've been seeking, all the health you've been praying for, all the love and success that feels so distant, it's already completed in divine mind. It already bears your name. It's already vibrating toward you at frequencies beyond what your physical senses can detect. But here's where the real revelation begins to unfold. Your subconscious mind has been programmed by years of worldly conditioning to expect struggle, to anticipate scarcity, to brace for disappointment. These aren't your true thoughts. They're inherited patterns, learned behaviors, societal imprints that have created invisible barriers between you and your natural birthright of abundance. During sleep, something miraculous happens. These barriers begin to dissolve. Your conscious mind, with all its learned limitations and fearful projections, finally steps aside. Your subconscious becomes like fertile ground, ready to receive new seeds of possibility. And when you feed it the right vibrations, the right frequencies, the right spiritual truths during those sacred hours, transformation occurs at the deepest cellular level. The ancient mystics understood this process intimately. They knew that true manifestation doesn't happen through force or desperate effort, but through divine alignment. When you surrender into sleep while listening to abundance affirmations, you're not just hoping for change. You're participating in the very mechanics of creation itself. Your brain waves shift into theta and delta frequencies, the same states that shamans and spiritual masters have accessed for millennia to perform what the world calls miracles. In these states, your mind becomes incredibly receptive to new programming. Every word of abundance you hear begins to overwrite decades of scarcity programming. Every affirmation of wealth starts dissolving the invisible contracts you unknowingly signed with limitation. This isn't positive thinking or wishful imagination. This is sacred science. Neuroscience now confirms what spiritual teachers have known for centuries: that repetitive exposure to specific frequencies and affirmations during sleep can literally rewire your neural pathways, creating new thought patterns that naturally attract different outcomes. What's fascinating is that beneath all the surface turbulence of your financial life, the bills, the budgets, the banking alerts, there flows what spiritual masters have called the golden river of prosperity. This isn't metaphorical language. It's a living reality that exists beyond the physical realm. This river has been flowing beneath your life since the moment you were born, constant and unending, never diminished by any appearance of lack or struggle you might be experiencing. Most people live their entire lives walking on dry ground, completely unaware that just beneath their feet flows an infinite stream of divine abundance. They make decisions based on scarcity, create strategies rooted in fear, and exhaust themselves trying to squeeze water from stones, all while standing directly above the most abundant source of prosperity in existence. The revelation that changes everything is this: you don't need to create abundance. You don't need to attract it, manifest it, or earn it through some complex spiritual gymnastics. You simply need to dip into what's already flowing. You need to step down from the harsh terrain of struggle and immerse yourself in the golden current that has been waiting for your recognition all along. During sleep, when your analytical mind stops building dams of doubt and limitation, this river naturally begins to surface. Your subconscious becomes like a divining rod, naturally drawn to the wealth frequency that's been calling your name. As you allow yourself to recognize this underlying prosperity, you begin to enter what can only be described as a sanctuary, not a physical place, but a state of consciousness where divine law reigns supreme. In this inner sanctuary, something magical happens. Your spoken word begins to merge with faith in ways that create what mystics call radiant decrees. These aren't ordinary affirmations or wishful thinking. When you speak from this sanctuary state during sleep, programming, your words carry the authority of spiritual law itself. They become living commands that summon wealth from every corner of creation. Behind the scenes of the visible world, invisible forces begin responding to your voice with the same obedience that water shows to gravity. This process reveals the hidden mechanics of true manifestation. Most people try to create change from the outside in, working harder, pushing against circumstances, forcing outcomes through will and effort. But the sanctuary approach works from the inside out, transforming the fundamental frequencies that determine what flows into your experience. Think about the most successful people you know. Not just financially, but those who seem to navigate life with an almost effortless grace. What you're witnessing isn't luck or privilege, but the natural result of someone whose inner sanctuary has been activated. They make decisions from abundance rather than scarcity. Their mindset operates from a place where limitation isn't even considered as a viable option. The moment you understand that you're stepping into what Scripture calls the sleep of the beloved, everything shifts. This isn't the restless tossing and turning of those burdened by worry, nor the shallow rest of minds trapped in cycles of anxiety. This is the blessed, holy sleep of someone who has finally recognized their true identity. One who is cradled in the invisible arms of infinite love and abundance. Behind the scenes of ordinary consciousness lies this profound truth: you are counted among the beloved, not because of what you've accomplished or failed to accomplish, not because of your bank balance or your mistakes, but simply because of who you are at the deepest level. When this recognition dawns, your entire relationship with sleep transforms from a mere biological function into a sacred communion with divine source. The impact of this shift in perspective is immediate and powerful. Your nervous system begins to release decades of accumulated tension. Your breath naturally deepens. That chronic background anxiety about money, about security, about whether you're doing enough or being enough, starts to dissolve into something far more supportive. This is where the hidden mechanics of true abundance begin to reveal themselves. Gratitude doesn't become something you have to manufacture or perform. It rises naturally from your heart, like a spring bubbling up from deep underground. You begin to recognize the safety that has always surrounded you, the love that has never abandoned you, the provision that has consistently found ways to reach you even in your darkest moments. When you truly embrace your beloved status and allow gratitude to flow naturally, something extraordinary begins to unfold. What most people experience as ordinary sleep transforms into what can only be called a night of miracles. This isn't poetic language. This is the actual mechanics of how divine intelligence operates when your consciousness becomes receptive to its highest possibilities. Behind the scenes, while your physical body rests, an incredible conspiracy begins to take shape. The night itself, those 8 hours of apparent inactivity, becomes your ally, working in partnership with divine intelligence to reshape your consciousness at the deepest levels. Every limiting belief you've carried, every financial story that has kept you small, every inherited pattern of scarcity begins to dissolve under the gentle but persistent influence of spiritual truth. This process reveals one of the most profound hidden truths about manifestation. Transformation doesn't require struggle or force. When you align with the natural rhythms of consciousness, change happens as naturally as a flower blooming or a river flowing toward the sea. Your sleeping mind becomes like soft clay in the hands of divine wisdom, ready to be reshaped into patterns that reflect your true abundance. As your mind opens to these deeper truths, you begin to access what can only be described as visionary experiences. Many people report seeing what appears to be a great celestial door during this process, not with their physical eyes, but with the inner sight that awakens when consciousness expands beyond ordinary limitations. This door glows with symbols of infinite supply, ancient and eternal markings that speak directly to the soul's understanding of abundance. Beyond this threshold, many glimpse rivers of gold sparkling in heaven's favor, flowing endlessly, never diminished, never restricted, always abundant. The moment you recognize that celestial doorway, something profound shifts in your understanding of how abundance actually works. Most people spend their entire lives searching for the key to prosperity in external circumstances. Better jobs, perfect timing, lucky breaks, or complex strategies. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. You've been carrying the key with you all along. The key to abundance doesn't rest in your hands, through what you do or how hard you work. It doesn't depend on your education, your connections, or your circumstances. The real key lives upon your tongue and within your faith. Every word you speak, especially during those sacred hours when your conscious mind steps aside, carries the power to swing wide the doors that seemed permanently locked. This revelation transforms your entire approach to manifestation. Instead of striving and struggling to force doors open through external effort, you begin to understand that your voice itself is the master key. When you speak from faith during sleep programming, when your words align with divine truth rather than worldly limitation, something extraordinary happens behind the scenes of reality. The door doesn't just crack open. It swings wide with such force that rivers of abundance pour forth directly into your dreams. These aren't metaphorical rivers. People who practice this consistently report waking up with specific financial guidance, business ideas that seem to download complete with implementation steps, and an inner knowing about money decisions that proves remarkably accurate. When you recognize the power of your voice as the master key, you begin to realize something that changes everything about how you see yourself in relation to prosperity. You're no longer standing outside the banquet hall of divine provision, pressing your face against the glass, wondering if you'll ever be invited inside. You're already seated at the table. This isn't a future promise or a distant possibility. Right now, in this moment, your cup is running over with blessings you haven't even noticed yet. You're already drinking deeply of what mystics call the eternal feast of provision. That inexhaustible source of divine supply that has been sustaining you, guiding you, and preparing abundance for you even during seasons when you felt forgotten or overlooked. The transformation from outsider to honored guest happens not through earning or deserving, but through recognition. When you finally see that the feast has been spread for you all along, when you understand that your name was engraved on that chair before you were born, everything about your energy changes. You stop approaching life from desperation and start moving from celebration. This shift in identity, from seeker to receiver, from beggar to beloved, from outsider to honored guest, creates what can only be described as a magnetic field around your life. Resources that were invisible suddenly become apparent. People begin offering help without being asked. Opportunities align in ways that feel almost choreographed by an unseen intelligence. When you truly embrace your position at the table of divine provision, when you recognize that your chair has been waiting for you all along, something monumentally shifts in your consciousness. This becomes the night you stop wandering in what can only be described as the desert of lack. That barren landscape where so many people spend their entire lives, convinced that scarcity is normal. That struggle is necessary, that abundance is reserved for others. Behind the scenes of this transformation lies a profound geographical shift in consciousness. You're not just changing your thoughts about money. You're literally migrating from one spiritual territory to another. The desert of lack, with its mirages of false hope and its endless cycles of thirst, gives way to the promised land of spiritual abundance, where rivers flow freely and trees bear fruit in every season. This isn't gradual progress or slow improvement. This is exodus, a complete departure from the old paradigm into a realm where you are never again separated from your good. The impact of this shift reverberates through every decision you make, every relationship you build, every opportunity you encounter. You begin operating from a completely different set of assumptions about what's possible for your life. The hidden truth that makes this transformation possible lies in understanding how spiritual power actually operates during sleep. Most people underestimate the profound shifts happening in consciousness during those 8 hours of apparent rest. They see sleep as downtime, as a break from productivity, as mere biological maintenance. But here's what changes everything in sleep. Your power is magnified beyond measure. Think about what happens when your conscious mind finally steps aside. All those mental barriers you've built through years of conditioning, all those logical arguments against abundance, all those reasonable explanations for why prosperity might not be possible for you. They dissolve into the background. Your subconscious mind stands wide open, like the most fertile soil imaginable, ready to receive whatever seeds you choose to plant. This is where the journey takes a fascinating turn into the mechanics of transformation itself. During waking hours, your conscious mind acts like a vigilant gatekeeper, filtering information, questioning possibilities, maintaining the status quo through doubt and analysis. But when sleep arrives, this gatekeeper finally takes a break, and your subconscious becomes what spiritual teachers call heavenly soil. Completely receptive, utterly accepting, ready to grow whatever you plant there. Understanding how your power magnifies during sleep opens the door to an even more fascinating revelation about the hidden mechanics of manifestation. What most people don't realize is that your sleeping hours transform your entire inner landscape into what can only be described as the great hidden workshop of spirit. During your waking hours, your mind is constantly bombarded with external stimuli, internal chatter, and endless streams of information that create what neuroscientists call cognitive load. But when sleep arrives and this noise finally quiets, something extraordinary happens behind the scenes of consciousness. Your subconscious mind, now free from the constant interference of mental noise, becomes like a master craftsman's workshop, perfectly organized, completely focused, ready to transform raw spiritual material into the forms that will manifest in your physical experience. Every abundance affirmation you hear during this time doesn't just float through your awareness and disappear. It gets taken into this workshop where invisible hands begin shaping it, into the blueprint for your financial reality. The impact of this process extends far beyond what happens during sleep itself. The decisions you make during your waking hours, the opportunities you notice, the actions you feel inspired to take. All of these emerge from the deep work happening in this subconscious workshop. When you understand that the gatekeeper is resting during sleep, you're ready to grasp one of the most profound revelations about how transformation actually happens at the deepest level. There's an ancient biblical principle that holds the key to everything. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Most people misunderstand this completely, assuming it refers to the fleeting thoughts that dart through their minds like birds, flitting from branch to branch throughout the day. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything about how you approach abundance programming. The heart in this context doesn't refer to surface level thinking at all. It represents those deep subconscious convictions that operate beneath your conscious awareness. The fundamental beliefs about reality, worthiness, and possibility that actually govern your experience, whether you're aware of them or not. These heart-level convictions are incredibly powerful because they operate behind the scenes of your daily decisions and automatic responses. When you encounter a financial opportunity, your surface mind might analyze the pros and cons, but your deep subconscious convictions have already determined whether you'll recognize it as viable, whether you'll feel worthy of pursuing it, and whether you'll take the actions necessary to make it successful. This is where the journey into sleep programming becomes truly transformative, because it allows you to work directly with these heart-level convictions during the hours when they're most malleable. Your subconscious mind operates according to completely different principles than your conscious mind. While your conscious mind questions, analyzes, and resists, your subconscious functions as what can only be described as a faithful servant. When your heart begins to believe abundance at the deepest level, when your subconscious faithful servant starts receiving clear impressions without interference, you enter what can only be described as a sacred planting season for your soul. Each word of abundance that flows over you during sleep programming carries a significance far beyond its surface meaning. These aren't just positive statements or hopeful affirmations drifting through your awareness. Each phrase is a divine seed, carried on the wind of spirit itself, designed to sink deep into the subconscious soil, where it cannot be uprooted by the doubts and fears that might assault your conscious mind during waking hours. The hidden truth about this planting process reveals why sleep programming succeeds where other abundance methods often fail. During your waking hours, doubt acts like a persistent weed that can choke out even the most beautiful intentions. But when abundant seeds are planted during sleep, they bypass this vulnerable surface layer entirely. They sink immediately into depths where doubt cannot reach, where fear has no jurisdiction, where the soil remains pure and uncontaminated by worldly conditioning. This process transforms your entire inner landscape into what can only be described as a vast silent garden under divine moonlight. In this hushed space, something beautiful begins to happen behind the scenes of ordinary awareness. invisible angels, those messengers of divine intelligence, move through this silent garden with purposeful grace, planting words of power that will reshape every area of your life. When you recognize your inner garden, growing under divine moonlight, when you sense those abundant seeds taking root in places doubt cannot reach, you're ready to understand, perhaps the most profound aspect of sleep programming. While your physical body rests and recovers, something extraordinary happens at the spiritual level that most people never realize is occurring. Your spirit, that eternal aspect of your being that transcends physical limitations, maintains what can only be described as direct communion with infinite intelligence. This isn't mystical poetry or wishful thinking. This is the actual mechanics of how divine wisdom flows into human consciousness when all the usual barriers are temporarily removed. During your waking hours, your mind is constantly occupied with immediate concerns, practical problems, and the endless stream of sensory input from your environment. But when sleep arrives and these distractions fade away, your spirit naturally reconnects with that vast intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and governs the movement of atoms. The hidden truth about this communion process reveals why sleep programming creates such rapid and lasting transformations. You're not just listening to affirmations or trying to convince yourself of new possibilities. You're actually receiving direct transmission of wisdom and guidance that's too expansive and multi-dimensional for your waking mind to fully grasp. Behind the scenes of this communion process, something remarkable begins to unfold. Those financial challenges that have been plaguing you for months or even years. Those business problems that seem to have no solution. Those relationship issues that felt permanently stuck. Answers begin flowing effortlessly into your awareness. Not through struggle or intense mental effort, but through what feels like gentle whispers in the quiet chambers of your subconscious mind. When you open yourself to receive divine solutions during your sacred sleeping hours, when you begin to trust the wisdom that flows effortlessly from infinite intelligence, you're led into perhaps the most liberating discovery of this entire journey. Spirit begins guiding you to finally cease striving, to step away from the exhausting treadmill of trying to force abundance through willpower, manipulation, and relentless effort, and enter what can only be described as the ease and certainty of divine law. This transition from striving to ease represents one of the most profound shifts available to human consciousness. Most people have been conditioned to believe that financial success requires grinding, hustling, sacrificing, and pushing against resistance until something finally gives way. They approach prosperity like a war to be won, rather than a gift to be received. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything: abundance operates according to spiritual law, not human effort. And spiritual law functions through ease, not struggle. Behind the scenes of this revelation lies a complete reframe of how manifestation actually works. When you're striving, you're operating from the assumption that you need to create something that doesn't already exist, that you need to convince the universe to give you what you want, that you need to prove your worthiness through suffering and sacrifice. But divine law operates from a completely different premise. That abundance is already decreed and established in the spiritual realm, waiting only for your alignment and recognition. When you choose ease over striving, when you allow those living forces of affirmation to flow through your consciousness without resistance, the transformation deepens into something that transcends ordinary spiritual experience. What's about to flow over you throughout the night isn't ordinary sleep content or generic positive thinking material. These affirmations represent what can only be described as living currents of divine law, actual streams of spiritual energy that carry the power to reshape your inner patterns at the deepest possible level. They don't just influence your thoughts temporarily or provide momentary comfort. They saturate your consciousness, like warm oil penetrating dry wood, reaching places in your psyche that conscious effort could never access. The journey of receiving these living currents transforms the entire nature of your sleep experience from passive rest into active spiritual reconstruction. Each affirmation that flows over you carries the frequency of divine abundance, not as an abstract concept, but as a living reality that your subconscious recognizes and begins to align with automatically. Your inner patterns, those deep grooves of expectation, assumption, and automatic response that have been governing your financial experience, begin to shift and reshape themselves around these new frequencies like iron filings, arranging themselves around a powerful magnet. When you choose ease over striving, when you allow those living forces of affirmation to carve new pathways through your consciousness, you naturally begin to embody what spiritual teachers call the art of surrender. This isn't the kind of surrender that implies defeat or giving up. This is the profound recognition that your conscious efforts to hide, control, and manipulate outcomes have been blocking the very abundance you've been seeking. As you surrender these controlling patterns, something beautiful happens. You become fertile ground where divine abundance can be planted without any resistance whatsoever. This transformation into fertile ground represents a complete shift in how you relate to prosperity. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who must work hard to create wealth, you begin to recognize yourself as the perfect soil where abundance naturally wants to grow. Your subconscious mind, freed from the constant interference of worry and control, becomes like a master architect working behind the scenes, building what can only be described as palaces of prosperity and gardens of joy in the invisible realm of consciousness. Behind the scenes of this surrendered state, your subconscious begins construction projects that would astound you if you could see them with your physical eyes. These palaces of prosperity aren't built from brick and mortar. They're constructed from new thought patterns, elevated expectations, and expanded beliefs about what's possible for your life. Before you can fully enter this state of fertile surrender, before your subconscious can begin its construction work without interference, there's an essential preparation that must take place. You must deliberately cast every burden at the feet of what Florence Scoville Shinn called the Christ within, that divine aspect of your being that has the power to transform any situation from lack to abundance, from struggle to ease. This burden casting isn't just a nice spiritual concept or a comforting ritual. It's a practical necessity for effective sleep programming, because you simply cannot become fertile ground while you're still clutching the heavy baggage of struggle and worry. Every financial anxiety you carry, every past failure you rehearse, every future concern you entertain acts like a stone in the soil, preventing the seeds of abundance from finding the soft earth they need to grow. The revelations that emerge from understanding this burden-casting process completely reframe how you approach bedtime preparation. Instead of going to sleep while mentally reviewing your problems, analyzing your challenges, or worrying about tomorrow's obligations, you begin each evening with a deliberate release ceremony. You acknowledge every burden that has accumulated during the day, the bills that need paying, the decisions that feel overwhelming, the circumstances that seem impossible, and you consciously place them in the hands of the divine intelligence that operates within you. When you're ready to release every burden that's been weighing down your fertile ground, when you recognize that clutching these worries has been blocking your abundance more than any external circumstance ever could, you discover something that will transform not just your sleep, but your entire approach to life's challenges. Spirit has provided what can only be described as a perfect law of release. A spiritual mechanism so precise and effective that it allows you to walk completely free from the weight you've been carrying. Light as a feather, buoyant on that golden river of supply we explored earlier. This law of release operates according to principles that most people never discover, because they've been conditioned to believe that carrying burdens is somehow noble or necessary. They think that worrying about problems shows responsibility, that losing sleep over challenges demonstrates care, that wrestling with difficulties alone proves strength. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. The very act of carrying these burdens creates a vibration of struggle that repels the solutions you're seeking. The perfect law of release works by recognizing that you were never designed to carry the weight of life's challenges on your own shoulders. Every financial pressure, every relationship concern, every health worry that keeps you awake at night. These are not your burdens to bear through human effort and mental gymnastics. They are opportunities to activate this divine law and experience the profound relief that comes from true spiritual delegation. When you're ready to cast your burdens on the Christ within, when you recognize that this divine intelligence has been waiting patiently to transform what seemed impossible, the time comes for one of the most powerful visualizations in all of spiritual practice. Close your eyes and see yourself standing before what can only be described as the throne of infinite spirit. Not a physical throne in some distant heaven, but the seat of divine authority that exists within the deepest chamber of your own consciousness. This isn't imagination or wishful thinking. This is spiritual sight, recognizing the true architecture of consciousness. As you stand in this sacred inner space, you begin to see with perfect clarity all the burdens you've been carrying. They appear not as abstract concepts, but as actual weights you can gather in your hands. The debts that have haunted your sleep, the failures that replay themselves in your mind, the fears that constrict your breathing, the shame that whispers you're not enough. All of these begin to take visible form in this inner vision. The hidden truth that emerges in this moment will transform your entire understanding of problems and challenges. These burdens that have felt so real, so heavy, so permanent in your physical experience appear in spiritual sight as what they truly are: illusions without any true substance. As you stand before this throne of infinite spirit, gathering these burdens that now appear so insubstantial in the light of divine truth, you notice something beautiful beginning to materialize. An altar appears before you, not made of stone or wood, but constructed from pure spiritual fire that radiates warmth without burning, light without blinding. This is the altar of spirit, where the most profound transformations occur. When you place your burdens on the altar of spirit and speak those transformative words, "I cast this burden on the Christ within and I go free," something magnificent begins to happen in the invisible realm that will astound you with its beauty and power. As the divine fire consumes what you've surrendered, as those illusions of lack and limitation dissolve into their original spiritual substance, you begin to feel something extraordinary stirring within your consciousness. Behind the scenes of this release, a profound metamorphosis begins to take place. Picture golden, luminous wings of abundance slowly unfurling from your back. Not physical wings, but the spiritual appendages of your true divine nature that have been folded and hidden beneath the weight of worldly concerns. These wings shimmer with the light of infinite possibility, radiate with the warmth of divine love, and pulse with the rhythm of eternal supply. They've been there all along, waiting for the moment when you would finally release enough weight to allow them to spread. The hidden truth about these wings of abundance reveals why the burden-casting process is so essential to financial transformation. You cannot soar while carrying the weight of human reasoning and struggle. You cannot rise into the realm of miraculous solutions while anchored to problems through worry and fear. But the moment you truly surrender these weights to divine intelligence, the moment you experience genuine release, these spiritual wings naturally unfold and begin to lift you above everything that once seemed to bind you. The impact of this elevation transforms your entire perspective on life's challenges. As you're lifted higher by these golden wings, as you rise into what can only be described as the realm of spiritual truth, you begin to see your circumstances from a completely different vantage point. The problems that loomed so large when you were walking in their shadows now appear surprisingly small and manageable from this elevated perspective. The obstacles that seemed insurmountable when you were pressed against them now reveal themselves as temporary illusions that block only those who haven't learned to rise above them. This journey to higher ground isn't just a comforting visualization. It's actual spiritual ascension that changes how you make decisions, how you respond to challenges, and how you navigate the practical affairs of daily life. From this elevated consciousness, you begin to operate from wisdom rather than worry, from inspiration rather than desperation, from faith rather than fear. What's particularly revelatory about reaching this elevated perspective is how it completely reframes your understanding of everything you've struggled against. From this height of spiritual clarity, you see with perfect certainty that lack never actually had any power over you. It was only an illusion that seemed real when you were walking through its shadows. When you feel those golden wings of abundance beginning to unfurl, when you sense yourself lifting into that elevated realm of spiritual truth, where lack has no power and fear holds no dominion, something beautiful begins to happen in your physical body that mirrors this inner transformation. As your consciousness rises above the problems that once seemed so overwhelming, your nervous system naturally begins to release the patterns of tension and resistance that have been locked in your muscles, your breath, and your cellular memory. This isn't just relaxation in the ordinary sense. This is what happens when your body finally receives the message that it's safe to let go. With each breath you take from this elevated perspective, you can feel tension melting away like ice in warm sunlight, muscles unwinding like tight ropes, finally being loosened, and a deep knowing settling into your bones that everything is being orchestrated by intelligence far greater than your own. Behind the scenes of this physical release lies a profound shift in how your nervous system operates. For months or perhaps years, your body has been locked in what scientists call chronic stress response. Constantly braced for financial disaster, perpetually prepared for the next crisis, always scanning for threats to your security and survival. But as you rise on those wings of abundance, as you settle into the knowing that divine intelligence handles all things perfectly, your nervous system begins to remember what safety feels like at the cellular level. This journey from tension to release, from resistance to flow, naturally leads you into one of the most beautiful experiences available to human consciousness. As your body relaxes completely, as your muscles surrender their grip on old patterns of struggle, you begin to feel yourself floating on what can only be described as invisible currents of divine abundance. These aren't metaphorical currents. They're actual energetic streams of supply, support, and synchronicity that flow constantly through the invisible realm, waiting to carry anyone who learns how to align with their rhythm. The hidden truth about these divine currents reveals why some people seem to effortlessly attract opportunities, while others struggle despite their best efforts. Those who flow with abundance have learned to stop swimming against these currents through force and willpower, and instead have discovered how to relax into the flow that wants to carry them exactly where they need to go. What's particularly remarkable about floating on these currents is how it transforms your relationship with effort and achievement. Instead of straining and pushing to make things happen, you begin to understand what Florence Scoville Shinn meant by effortless demonstration. You're lifted by wings of light to heights where miracles are normal, where synchronicities are commonplace, where the right people appear at the right time, with the right resources in ways that feel almost choreographed by unseen intelligence. When you begin to float on these divine currents, when you feel yourself being carried by invisible streams of abundance that require no effort or striving on your part, you arrive at perhaps the most pivotal moment of this entire transformation process. It's time to speak what Florence Scoville Shinn called the final word of release. Take a deep breath and speak these words slowly, deliberately, with the full weight of your spiritual recognition behind them. I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free. Don't just say these words. Let them move through your consciousness, like sound waves rippling through still water, reaching every cell, every thought pattern, every buried fear or doubt that has been holding you captive to limitation. Feel the vibration of, I go free, echoing in the chambers of your heart, reverberating through your nervous system, announcing to every aspect of your being that the old patterns of struggle and worry are now officially dissolved. Behind the scenes of speaking this final declaration, something extraordinary happens in the invisible realm that most people never realize they're activating. The moment these words leave your lips with genuine surrender and faith, celestial mechanisms begin to engage that operate beyond the laws of ordinary cause and effect. This is where the journey takes its most magnificent turn. Because now that you've released every burden that was weighing down your consciousness, now that you've spoken the words that activate divine intervention, the gates of divine supply begin to swing wide open. These aren't metaphorical gates or symbolic imagery. These are actual spiritual mechanisms that govern the flow of abundance from the invisible realm into visible form. And they've been waiting for your complete release to operate at full capacity. The hidden truth about these gates of divine supply reveals why burden carrying blocks abundance so effectively. When you're clutching problems and wrestling with challenges through human effort alone, your hands are too full to receive what's trying to reach you. Your consciousness is too contracted by worry to perceive the gifts that surround you. Your energy field is too dense with resistance to allow the flow of divine provision. But the moment you truly cast every burden on the Christ within, your hands open, your consciousness expands, and your entire being becomes receptive to what's been waiting for you all along. What begins to pour forth through these opened gates defies ordinary understanding of how supply works. These are treasures that have been prepared for you since before the world began. Not earned through struggle or achieved through merit, but held in divine storage, awaiting the moment when you would develop the spiritual capacity to receive them. When you feel those gates of divine supply beginning to open, when you sense the mechanisms of heaven engaging in response to your complete release, you're ready to understand one of the most profound truths about how spiritual transformation actually operates. What you're experiencing isn't random cosmic generosity or unpredictable divine whim. You've activated what can only be described as spiritual law in its purest form. And this law operates with a precision and perfection that exceeds anything in the physical universe. Behind the scenes of every manifestation, every breakthrough, every seemingly miraculous solution that appears in your life lies this invisible legal system that governs the movement of substance from the unseen realm into visible form. Spiritual law cannot fail because it's not subject to human opinion, economic conditions, or external circumstances. It does not delay because it operates beyond the limitations of time and space. The instant you align your word with divine truth, the instant your decree harmonizes with the fundamental frequencies of creation itself, invisible gates don't gradually crack open. They fly wide with the force of absolute spiritual authority. This revelation transforms your entire understanding of timing and manifestation. Most people approach abundance, work with the unconscious assumption that they're making requests to a distant deity, who might or might not respond, according to mysterious divine will. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. When you speak from complete alignment with spiritual law, when your words carry the frequency of unwavering faith, rather than desperate hope, you're not petitioning for favor. You're activating automatic universal response. When you recognize that your word is law in the spiritual realm, when you understand that aligned speech carries the weight of heaven itself, you're ready to grasp perhaps the most profound truth about spiritual authority. What you're experiencing isn't human willpower, trying to force results through sheer determination or positive thinking. This is something far more profound. What can only be described as divine agreement. A sacred process where your tongue literally becomes one with the creative word that spoke the universe into being. This distinction transforms everything about how you approach abundance work. Human will tries to manipulate outcomes, push against resistance, and bend circumstances to match personal desires through force and effort. But divine agreement operates according to completely different principles. When you speak from this state of spiritual alignment, you're not imposing your limited human perspective on infinite intelligence. You're allowing infinite intelligence to speak through you, using your voice as an instrument of cosmic creativity. Behind the scenes of this divine agreement lies one of the most beautiful mysteries of spiritual law. The same creative force that said, "Let there be light," and light appeared, that spoke galaxies into existence and established the laws that govern atomic particles. This same word power becomes available through your aligned consciousness. When you speak from this state of divine agreement, when your tongue has become one with creative word power, you can say with absolute authority, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for my great abundance." And something extraordinary happens in the invisible realm that defies ordinary understanding of cause and effect. The moment these words leave your lips with genuine faith and complete surrender to divine will, unseen pathways that have been blocked for months or years instantly begin to clear. It's as if invisible hands start moving obstacles you didn't even know existed, removing barriers that your conscious mind couldn't perceive, dissolving resistance patterns that were operating beneath your awareness. Obstructions that seemed permanent suddenly become temporary. Closed doors begin to swing wide. Hidden channels that connect you to your highest good unlock with silent precision. The hidden truth about this specific command reveals why it's so remarkably effective. You're not asking for something that doesn't exist or trying to create abundance from nothing. The abundance is already there, already prepared, already bearing your name. But the pathways between your current experience and this divine provision have been cluttered with old belief patterns, limited thinking, and unconscious resistance. When you speak this command with divine agreement, you're essentially saying to infinite intelligence, "Clear the way for what's already mine to reach me." When you feel those unseen pathways beginning to clear as infinite spirit responds to your aligned command, when you sense the invisible hands of divine intelligence removing obstacles you didn't even know existed, you're ready to step into one of the most transformative declarations in all of spiritual science. This isn't just another affirmation to repeat hopefully. This is a statement of magnetic truth that fundamentally alters your relationship with abundance from seeking it to being irresistibly sought by it. Take a deep breath and declare with complete conviction, "I am an irresistible magnet for all that belongs to me by divine right." But don't just speak these words casually or automatically. Speak them as though each syllable is a key turning in a heavenly lock, as though every sound is activating celestial mechanisms that have been waiting for your recognition of this fundamental truth about your spiritual nature. Behind the scenes of this magnetic declaration lies one of the most profound shifts available to human consciousness. The transition from chasing abundance to being pursued by it. Most people spend their entire lives running after money, opportunities, and success, exhausting themselves in pursuit of what seems to stay just out of reach. But when you truly understand and embody your nature as an irresistible magnet, everything reverses. You stop chasing and start attracting. You cease pursuing and begin receiving. You quit seeking and start being sought. When you feel yourself becoming irresistibly magnetic, when you sense that shift from chasing abundance to being pursued by everything that belongs to you, by divine right, you're ready to speak what Florence Scoville Shinn called the fundamental affirmations of divine wealth. But here's the crucial distinction that transforms these from mere positive statements into actual spiritual commands. You must speak them not with hope or wishful thinking, but with the tone of victory, as one who already knows these truths are established facts in the spiritual realm. Let your voice carry the authority of absolute conviction as you declare, God is my unfailing supply. Feel the power of that word, unfailing, as it resonates through your consciousness. This isn't supply that might come or could possibly arrive if conditions align perfectly. This is supply that cannot fail, cannot be depleted, cannot be withheld by any earthly circumstance. Continue with the same victorious tone. Riches flow to me under grace. Notice how this declaration eliminates all struggle and effort from the equation. Riches don't trickle reluctantly or arrive after tremendous labor. They flow like water finding its natural level, like rivers rushing toward the sea. And they come under grace, which means they arrive not because you've earned them through suffering or proved your worthiness through sacrifice, but because grace is the natural operating system of divine love. Complete this trinity of wealth affirmations with unwavering confidence. I walk in the light of divine wealth. This isn't future tense hoping. This is present tense reality. You're not walking toward wealth or trying to reach it someday. You're walking in it right now, surrounded by it, illuminated by its light, breathing its atmosphere. This victorious speaking naturally leads you into one of the most powerful visualizations in all of abundance work. As these affirmations settle into your consciousness with the weight of established law, you begin to see in your inner vision a great vault that has been sealed for what seems like ages. This isn't just any storage facility. This is the cosmic treasury where your divine inheritance has been kept in perfect preservation, waiting for the moment when you would develop enough spiritual authority to claim it. The journey of witnessing this vault opening is transformative, because what you're seeing represents the culmination of all your burden releasing, all your magnetic declarations, all your victorious affirming. You hear a mighty click that echoes through the chambers of your soul. Not the tentative sound of a lock being picked, but the authoritative sound of divine timing engaging, of celestial authorization being granted, of spiritual law confirming your readiness to receive what has been yours all along. As the massive doors swing wide with effortless grace, what reveals itself inside takes your breath away. Cascading rivers of gold flow like liquid sunlight, sparkling with the joy of finally being released from containment. Precious jewels of every color imaginable catch the light and throw rainbows across the walls. Treasures beyond description. Not just material wealth, but opportunities, relationships, health, creativity, and spiritual gifts. Pour forth in abundance, so overwhelming it makes your former concepts of prosperity seem quaint by comparison. When you feel that cosmic vault opening, when you witness those rivers of gold and cascades of jewels pouring forth in response to your victorious declarations, you're experiencing something far more significant than a powerful meditation or inspiring visualization. What you decree in these moments of spiritual alignment doesn't simply float through your consciousness and disappear. It begins a profound journey through the halls of your subconscious mind, that will transform your entire waking experience. Behind the scenes of every word, you speak with genuine faith and divine agreement. An extraordinary process begins that most people never realize is happening. Each declaration you make with spiritual authority echoes through what can only be described as the halls of your subconscious. Vast inner chambers where every thought, every belief, every expectation that governs your daily reality is stored and maintained. These aren't empty echoes that fade into silence. They're living vibrations that resonate through these inner halls, like bells ringing in a cathedral, awakening dormant possibilities and activating latent potentials. The hidden truth about this subconscious echoing reveals why sleep programming is so remarkably effective. During your waking hours, these inner halls are filled with the noise and chatter of conscious thought, making it difficult for new declarations to find space to resonate fully. But during sleep, when the mental static quiets down, your spoken decrees have unlimited space to reverberate, to build momentum, to create what can only be described as resonant frequency throughout your entire inner landscape. When you feel your words weaving abundance into the very fabric of reality, when you recognize that your declarations are stamped upon creation itself and echoing through the halls of your subconscious, you arrive at perhaps the most peaceful and powerful realization of this entire journey. The time for striving, forcing, and anxious effort has completely passed. Now you can rest in what Florence Scoville Shinn called quiet certainty. The profound knowing that divine law is already in motion on your behalf, and nothing in heaven or earth can stop what has been set into spiritual motion through your aligned word. This isn't the kind of rest that comes from exhaustion or resignation. This is the serene confidence of someone who understands how spiritual mechanics actually operate. When you decree abundance from genuine spiritual authority, when your words carry the weight of divine agreement, you activate laws that are more reliable than gravity, more consistent than mathematics, more unstoppable than the tide. These laws don't require your constant monitoring, your fearful checking, or your anxious maintenance. They work automatically, continuously, perfectly, flowing toward you like mighty rivers that know exactly where to find you. Behind the scenes of this quiet certainty lies one of the most beautiful aspects of spiritual law: its absolute reliability. The abundance flowing to you isn't subject to economic conditions, political changes, or other people's opinions about what you deserve. It moves under grace, which means it operates according to divine love, rather than human merit, according to spiritual law, rather than worldly logic. When you feel divine law working for you, when that quiet certainty settles into your consciousness, like warm honey, filling every cell with peace and expectation, you discover that you've naturally arrived at what can only be described as the perfect place to receive. This isn't a physical location or a temporary state of relaxation. This is the optimal vibrational frequency for allowing spiritual transformation to occur without resistance, interference, or the usual mental chatter that blocks deeper programming from taking root. Behind the scenes of reaching this perfect receptivity lies months, or perhaps years of unconscious preparation that has been leading you toward this exact moment. Every financial struggle that taught you to desire something better. Every moment of frustration that made you question the old ways of thinking about money. Every glimpse of possibility that stirred hope in your heart. All of these experiences have been preparing your consciousness to receive what's about to flow through you during these sacred hours of sleep. What's about to flow over you throughout the night isn't ordinary sleep content or generic positive thinking material. These affirmations represent what can only be described as living currents of divine law, actual streams of spiritual energy that carry the power to reshape your inner patterns at the deepest possible level. They don't just influence your thoughts temporarily or provide momentary comfort. They saturate your consciousness, like warm oil penetrating dry wood, reaching places in your psyche that conscious effort could never access. When you recognize that you're perfectly receptive, when you feel those living currents of divine law beginning to flow through your consciousness, without any resistance or interference, the transformation deepens into something that transcends ordinary spiritual experience. As your awareness settles even more completely into this state of pure receptivity, you begin to feel yourself lying upon what can only be described as a great river of golden light. Not metaphorically, but as an actual energetic reality that supports and carries you with effortless grace. This isn't the kind of visualization you have to strain to maintain or force yourself to see clearly. When you've reached this level of spiritual receptivity, when your consciousness has been properly prepared, through burden releasing and gate opening, this river of golden light becomes as real and tangible as the bed you're resting upon. You feel yourself floating effortlessly upon its warm, luminous currents, completely supported, perfectly safe, carried by forces far greater than any human effort could generate. Behind the scenes of this floating experience lies one of the most profound states available to human consciousness. What mystics have called divine suspension, where you're held in perfect balance between the earthly and the heavenly, between the material and the spiritual, between what was and what's about to become. As you float upon this river of golden light, you begin to notice something magnificent happening in the space above you. Stars of divine wisdom begin to shine with increasing brilliance. Not distant celestial bodies, but close, intimate sources of illumination that beam directly into your consciousness. Each star represents a specific aspect of abundance consciousness: prosperity, generosity, confidence, magnetism, worthiness, flow. And their combined light creates what can only be described as perfect conditions for spiritual transformation. What makes this experience even more sacred is the presence of angels keeping silent watch around you. These aren't religious symbols or comforting metaphors. They're actual messengers of divine intelligence, whose job is to ensure that this transformation process occurs without disruption. They guard against any negative influences that might try to interfere with your programming, maintain the perfect energetic environment for deep spiritual work, and serve as witnesses to the profound changes taking place in your consciousness. The journey of resting in this angelic protection, while floating on golden light, creates the optimal conditions for what happens next. The most direct spiritual transmission of abundance consciousness you may ever experience. Infinite Spirit itself begins to speak through every word you hear throughout the night. Not as distant communication from some faraway source, but as intimate conversation between the divine intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and the divine spark that lives within your own heart. Each affirmation that flows over you from this point forward isn't just information being shared or encouragement being offered. These are seeds of riches, peace, and perfect right action being planted directly into the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. Your consciousness has become like perfectly prepared garden ground, free from the weeds of doubt and limitation, soft and receptive, ready to nurture whatever divine intelligence chooses to plant there during these sacred hours of transformation. When you feel those angels watching over your transformation, when you sense Infinite Spirit preparing to plant seeds of abundance in the perfectly prepared soil of your consciousness, you arrive at perhaps the most sacred moment of this entire journey. The time for effort, visualization, and active participation has completely passed. Now comes what Florence Scoville Shinn called the moment of final rest in peace. Not ordinary sleep, but the profound surrender that allows divine truth to work without any interference from your conscious mind or unconscious resistance patterns. This isn't rest that comes from exhaustion or the kind of peace that emerges from temporary relief. This is the deep cellular relaxation that occurs when every fiber of your being finally releases its grip on old patterns and opens completely to transformation. As you settle into this final rest, you can feel every word of abundance that has been spoken over you beginning to sink into your consciousness, like golden rain soaking into thirsty earth, reaching places in your psyche that have been parched by years of scarcity thinking. Behind the scenes of this golden rain process lies one of the most comprehensive transformations available to human consciousness. This isn't just your thoughts being influenced or your emotions being soothed. Every cell in your body, every corner of your mind, every layer of your soul is being rescripted by divine truth. Your DNA itself begins to remember its original blueprint of abundance. Your nervous system starts rewiring around expectations of ease rather than struggle. Your energy field recalibrates to attract prosperity rather than repel it. As this golden rain of divine truth penetrates every level of your being throughout the long hours of the night, something miraculous begins to prepare itself in the depths of your consciousness. Your awakening tomorrow morning won't be ordinary rising from sleep. It will be what can only be described as emerging renewed, refreshed, and rich in consciousness of supply. This isn't wishful thinking about how you hope to feel. This is the inevitable result of allowing divine truth to rewrite your fundamental programming while you rest. The journey of awakening with this renewed consciousness transforms your entire relationship with abundance from that very first moment of stirring back into awareness. Instead of waking up with the familiar weight of financial concerns pressing against your mind, you find yourself emerging into a world where God's wealth surrounds you like the very air you breathe. Instead of starting the day by mentally reviewing problems and challenges, you begin each morning aware that divine supply flows through you like blood through your veins, natural, constant, and life-giving. What's particularly beautiful about this awakening process is how it creates what mystics call manifestation momentum, a quality of consciousness that automatically attracts the physical evidence to match your inner transformation. You don't wake up and then try to create abundance through effort and strategy. You awaken already rich in the consciousness that naturally draws prosperity, and this inner richness begins manifesting endlessly throughout your day in forms that perfectly match your elevated vibration. When you awaken rich in consciousness, when that profound rescripting has occurred at every level of your being throughout the night, you discover something that will revolutionize not just your financial life, but your entire understanding of how abundance actually operates in the practical world. The relationship between you and money undergoes a complete reversal that most people never experience because they've been conditioned to see this dynamic completely backwards. Here's the hidden truth that changes everything about your financial reality. Money is not your master demanding that you serve its requirements, bow to its scarcity, or exhaust yourself trying to earn its approval. Money is your obedient servant, waiting patiently and eagerly for your command, ready to flow in whatever direction your spiritually aligned consciousness directs it. When your tongue aligns with this truth, rather than the world's lies about financial struggle, money responds instantly and joyfully, not reluctantly or conditionally. Behind the scenes of this master-servant reversal lies one of the most profound shifts available to human consciousness around abundance. Most people spend their entire lives in unconscious slavery to money, letting their bank balance determine their mood, allowing financial pressures to dictate their decisions, permitting economic conditions to control their sense of security and self-worth. But when you awaken with consciousness rich in divine supply, when you've been rescripted by golden rain throughout the night, you naturally begin to understand what Florence Scoville Shinn discovered decades ago: that your spiritual authority over money is absolute, when exercised from genuine alignment with divine truth. The transformation that occurs when you truly grasp this servant master dynamic is immediate and unmistakable. Instead of approaching your finances with anxiety and limitation, you begin to address money with the calm confidence of someone giving instructions to a faithful employee. Instead of worrying about whether there will be enough, you start directing money to appear where and when you need it. Instead of feeling controlled by economic circumstances, you recognize yourself as the spiritual authority that money naturally obeys when commanded from genuine faith. This shift reveals why one sentence spoken with complete spiritual authority has the power to transform years of financial struggle into flowing abundance. When you declare with unwavering conviction, "Money is not my master. It is my obedient servant," you're not just making a positive affirmation or hoping to feel better about your situation. You're invoking what can only be described as divine law, a fundamental principle that governs the relationship between consciousness and form throughout the entire universe. The impact of speaking this sentence with genuine spiritual authority, rather than desperate hope, creates what can only be described as instant realignment in the invisible realm. Money, which has been responding to your unconscious commands of fear and limitation, suddenly receives new instructions from a consciousness that remembers its true spiritual rank. When you feel that shift from earning mentality to receiving consciousness, when money begins to obey your voice through consistent declaration and spiritual authority, you arrive at perhaps the most liberating moment in this entire transformation: the opportunity to consciously burn every old contract you've unconsciously signed with struggle, fear, and financial limitation. Behind the scenes of your abundance journey lies a collection of invisible agreements that have been governing your financial experience without your conscious awareness. These aren't formal documents, but energetic contracts written in the sweat of exhaustion, signed with the ink of anxiety, and renewed daily through patterns of thought and speech that reinforce scarcity rather than abundance. The visualization that transforms everything is simple but profound. See yourself standing before a great fireplace where flames of divine love burn with purifying intensity. In your hands, you hold that old contract written in sweat and fear, covered with clauses about having to work harder, earn more, prove your worthiness, and sacrifice your peace for financial security. As you watch those limiting contracts dissolve into ash and smoke, as you feel the weight of impossible terms and exhausting conditions lifting from your consciousness, you begin to speak a new covenant that rewrites your entire relationship with abundance. With the authority of someone who has remembered their divine nature, you declare, "I now sign my name to ease and overflow." When you recognize yourself as the gate of abundance, when you feel that profound identity shift occurring as you step into your role as the channel through which divine wealth flows, you're ready to make perhaps the most empowering transformation in all of spiritual development around prosperity. The complete shift from asking to authorizing in every aspect of your financial life. This isn't just a change in vocabulary or a subtle adjustment in how you phrase your desires. This represents a fundamental elevation in consciousness from the position of spiritual beggar to the role of divine administrator. The declaration that changes everything is both simple and revolutionary. I no longer ask, I authorize. But this isn't just different wording for the same old hoping and wishing. This is a complete reversal of your relationship to divine supply. When you authorize rather than ask, you're speaking from heaven rather than from hunger, operating as an oracle of divine law rather than responding to the mood of your bank balance. When you speak with divine certainty, when you feel that shift from asking to authorizing occurring in your consciousness, as you recognize your true spiritual position as one made in the image of spoken authority, you discover the deepest secret of abundance consciousness. You are not seeking a formula for prosperity that exists outside yourself. You are the formula. You are not hoping to eventually overflow with abundance. You overflow now because overflow is your essential nature when aligned with divine truth. You are not becoming someone who demonstrates spiritual law. You are the living demonstration of spiritual law in action. The impact of speaking these words with complete conviction creates what can only be described as instant identification with your highest spiritual identity. This isn't gradual growth or slow development. This is immediate recognition of what has always been true about your essential nature. The moment you declare, "I am the formula, I overflow," with genuine spiritual authority, every tomb of limitation that has held your consciousness captive begins to crack open. What's particularly powerful about this resurrection script is how it calls you forth from every form of spiritual death you may have unconsciously accepted. The death of dreaming big, the death of expecting miracles, the death of believing in your own divine worth. This declaration doesn't just change your circumstances. It resurrects your true identity from beneath layers of learned limitation and false humility. You become not someone seeking abundance, but abundance itself seeking expression through human form. You cease being a person hoping to manifest wealth. You embody wealth consciousness that naturally attracts its material reflection. If you've stayed with me through this entire transformation, if you felt these shifts occurring in your awareness, as we've moved from burden, releasing to gate opening to voice recognition, to spiritual sovereignty, then something tells me this message was specifically meant for you at this exact moment in your life. The fact that you're still here, that you've absorbed these teachings about sleep programming and abundance consciousness, suggests that your soul was ready for this level of spiritual authority. Your abundance journey has only just begun, and tonight, as you rest in the consciousness of the living formula, you carry with you the keys to unlock every door that has ever stood between you and your divine inheritance. I am the formula. I overflow. And so it is.